Thank you for the nice introduction, Gopi. So let's learn about agents. So you may have heard about this term thrown around these days everywhere. So I'm going to go back in the history a little bit and learn about some fundamentals and see the overall space looking like. As yesterday about the RAG, you can see how the landscape looks like and then go further explore in different areas that you are interested in. So here's the overview of the session. First, I'm going to introduce some terminologies. Then we are going to use that terminology as a lens to look at the recent research in this generally in foundation model-based agent space, and also the software engineering related agents. And what are the challenges? Interesting stuff. So the fundamental question, what is an agent? So this is not a new question. So even like several decades ago, people have been looking into agents, not only software. There are some software engineering agent work in the past, but also in the hardware space, like in robotics, like the agent-oriented systems. So there's a weak notion about this agent as an entity that can perceive and act upon their environment. It's a very basic definition. So you may be wondering, the thermostat, for example, it perceives the temperature differences and changes the temperature if it's needed, act upon the environment. So is thermostat an agent? One can say yes. But there's a stronger notion that some have defined. This is not a recent work actually, like even in the 90s or way before that. So the strong notion is, we call agent something that possesses desires, beliefs, intentions, and the ability to act. This is so now we need to go into each of these. What is a desire? What is a belief? Intention? All these things. So very philosophical discussion. No, I'm not going to go into all this stuff. But these are several ideas about this. So at the same time period, they came up with some key properties that they expect from an agent. One is autonomy. So agents should be able to operate without much intervention from humans or others. So they can have some control about this. And then they have some social ability. They can talk with each other, like they can talk with agents themselves, or they can talk with humans in some form of agent communication language. And then there's the reactive properties, like when there's something changes, agents can react to that when there's something changing in the environment. And then there's the proactiveness also. So agents have some high-level goal. You don't have to tell them step by step to how to achieve this goal. They proactively decompose the task, can try to do different things. So that's one property. So you may notice, so all this work that's been recently we see over the decades, they don't have all of these properties. They have some of these properties, some tools, but most of them only have like one or two properties. So we say it's not binary, like whether it's an agent or not, it's a spectrum. We call that agentic. So people use the term, it's like an agentic system. So agentic, they use the term loosely to mean it has some of these properties. Okay, so we now have a definition, what is an agent. Now let's look at how people use these concepts to define what is a foundational model-based agent in this new space. So, so I'm going to go into each of these now. First thing is the environment. They live, the agents are in some environment. People interact with this agent in that environment. They can act in this, the agents. Agents are mainly located in one environment. And to get information from this environment, they have to have some tools to receive perception. So it can be from different modalities. It could be like from audio, video, text, and they need to have some internal representation of these signals that they are getting. And then they need to act on this environment. So it could be via some robotic arm, or like calling an external API, or producing some text file or something. But to go from this perception to action, you need some cognitive capacity. So there are several bits there. You need to have some form of memory, that is, and some part of knowledge. And also, you need to do some things to this memory and knowledge, make some plans, do some reasoning, in order to do some actions. Okay, so that's the general idea. And we see, most common thing we see as foundation model based agent is conversational agents. So they are for question and answering, but it's not as simple as that. Even then, there are different types of question and answering. So there's common sense question and answering. It's about some common sense things like in the world, or some knowledge intensive one, like some specific trivia. Or for some things, you need to converse multi-hop, that is back and forth. You need to go with the human and a agent. And then there's symbolic reasoning and mathematical reasoning. So question and as you can see, some agents could be better at one of these tasks, but not all. And then recently there are software developer agents also. So Open Hands is one cool new recent project that they have. I think it was initially called Open Devin, but they later renamed to Open Hands. They are trying to build these cool software developer agents. And then there's scientific discovery agents. That's also some cool new development. So they can read some research papers, design experiments, and execute these experiments, write papers, all these things that scientists can do. So there's ChemCrow, and there's another paper called AI Scientist that's trying to be an scientific discovery agents. So as you can see, they are claiming to do all these things that our humans are doing, and there could be many other ones. And also, you see, to evaluate, like these are trying to do different things, and you need to evaluate them differently. So, like when all the new models were getting released, they used to do people used to do this test. You say how many R's are in the word strawberry, and most of the time models got it wrong, and they tried to measure the capabilities of the model using this question, or can this count how many R's are in strawberry? But evaluation of these type of agents is not that simple. They are talented they have skills in different areas, so you have to think about how to evaluate them in these certain domains. It's not just about counting R's in strawberry. Okay, now let's move on to environments. So I think most of us are familiar with agents in digital environments. So the one on the top right-hand corner is a email inbox. It's from a company called Shortwave. It's trying to provide agentic behavior for dealing with email. And then there are IDEs. So there are agents in IDEs these days helping out developers. And also, even better, now recently Anthropic came with this computer use capability. So all these other tools that I show, these digital environments I showed, they use some form of API to interact with the environment. But this one, it can do any task in the computer desktop. This Anthropic's computer use, what they are doing is they are like taking screenshots every few seconds and recognizing what's going on in the desktop and execute tasks. So you don't even need like a API to communicate with these external internal pieces in the desktop. It can just make sense what's going on in the screen. So we can see in these digital environments, agents are getting operated. And then there's physical environments. You may think, oh, this is like robotics. We as foundation models are not really into these physical environments. But there are papers about how language models and vision models are being used in robotic domain. So in this case, you have very complex scenarios. You have to navigate this lab space or navigate a kitchen. You have to find objects. You have to move the objects around. So for that, they use textual prompts. They are saying, human is saying sort fruits and condiments in different plates. And then there's a reasoning part that they try to get some feedback from the cameras and try to come up with what is the next step that we need to do. And not only these internal indoor environments, now people are looking into how to use foundational models for driving. So there's this nice paper about using, it's called On the Road with GPT-4 Vision. So if you think about it, there are many different actions we have to do in this physical environment. So in this case, you can see what they're trying to do. Like the prompt is describe the condition of the traffic lights. So GPT-4V tells you, oh, I'm seeing a green light, or I'm seeing a red light, things like that. But it gets sometimes, there are some corner cases, the model gets surprised what to do. For example, here, you see on the top bottom right corner, you see an airplane on the road. So that's not a common scenario that you see on the road. So they have to decide what to do now. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges when you are dealing with physical environments like that. And then there are simulated environments. Most of us are not lucky to run these experiments in the real world, and we don't want to get the risk of the consequences of this. So we use simulated environments. Here, this environment is called AlphaWorld. They use a simulated physical space and the textual descriptions to do certain tasks and get responses and navigate this whole thing in a simulated setting. All this is rendered using 3D graphics. And then that's the physical stuff being simulated, and then there are software also being simulated. So here they have marketplace and different websites. They are building agents to navigate these websites, but these websites are just simulated, like shopping, how to navigate shopping websites, how to order stuff, how to do like search queries on these different websites in a simulated setting. The Web Arena is a nice paper about this type of work. Okay, so now we know about different environments. Now let's look into memory. So there's this nice paper called Cognitive Architectures for Language Agents. So they have this nice modeling about different types of memory. So I borrowed this diagram from that paper. They say there are 3 different types of long-term memory. So these ideas are from autonomous agents and cognitive sciences that came before this. So here they say there are 3 different types of long-term memory: procedural, semantic, and episodic memory. Procedural is about the system itself, and then there's the facts about the world, and then the sequences of the agent's past behaviors. And then there's working memory or temporary memory, reflects the agent's current circumstances. Now let's go into details about the procedural memory. So procedural memory is the production system itself. So unlike other types of memory, you need to have some procedural memory to initialize things. So it should be done by the designer and create this system that has some form of memory to how to operate. So one way of doing this is using LLMs. So LLM waits, and so the trained model has some information what to do about things, but there are some challenges about that. Also, it's a stochastic system, and it's very hard to interpret. We don't know what's going on inside the model, so it's very difficult to interpret. But it has some flexibility, and it has some implicit knowledge. And then there's some agent code. Usually you use some Python code or some Python framework surrounding the language model to have some more logic. So you have some fixed rules, like, or if you get this type of input, you should return this response, or you should send it to the foundational model part of the agent and get some result. So you can hard code some rules using Python code or some other programming language. That is also part of the agent's procedural memory. But as you can understand, this is very deterministic, but also this is very rigid. You cannot tackle all the various edge cases. But the good thing is it's interpretable, and the developer can extend it to have more rules or more logic. And yeah, so basically this logic says what to do in certain scenarios, actions, decision making, and things like that, apart from the foundational model weights. So if you are thinking of designing an agent, and if you are thinking of what should I use the procedural memory for, whether should I use the model weights part of it, or should I re-implement it as Python code, you can think of it as like this. So there could be some use cases you need to have this some agent code implemented as Python also. So for example, in Tree of Thought paper, they to do the tree search, they have some Python code to traverse the tree. So that cannot be done using the foundation model itself. So that you have some logic in Python. And then there's semantic memory. So semantic memory is agent's knowledge about the world, and it's used for reasoning and decision making. So we usually use an external database. So even though it says semantic memory, we shouldn't get confused. You don't need like always a vector database to implement this. It's just an implementation detail. The key point is you can use any external database to store some semantic information. You can use vector databases, but previously in reinforcement learning, they have been used like gaming manuals and stuff like that. But even with foundational models, you can store some semantic memory in some external data source. And there are papers about how over time this semantic memory can get updated using agents. So in NLMap, they use vision language models to build a semantic map of the environment. So as you are navigating, you build that map, and later you can use it to query. That type of information we call semantic memory. And in generative agents also, they reason about the little details that's happening in the environment and store the resulting inferences in some form of memory. That is also semantic memory. And in reflection paper, they reflect on failed episodes and store the results as that can be used later. Now, if you are building your own agentic system, you have to think about how to use semantic memory. You can make it you can always, of course, read from the semantic memory to reason and do decision making. But should we update the semantic memory? If we need to update the semantic memory, we should be very careful not to affect things in the future. So you have to have some measures to make sure your semantic memory is not getting corrupted from the new stuff that you are adding to it. So in some cases, you may need a fixed read-only semantic memory, but you may need to sometimes you need to incrementally build up world knowledge from experiences. But we have to make sure we are not corrupting stuff. Just be careful. And then there are episodic memory. So episodic memory is about all the past episodes, like the little details that we had, in a gaming system. It could be previous game episodes that we played, or memory about these things. So it's like storing sequences, raw experiences of agents' past behaviors, earlier decision cycles. It could be past event flows, game trajectories, input-output pairs. So this is used in planning. So how this works is we load these episodic memories into working memory or the temporary memory to support reasoning. And then there are certain papers that talks about using this episodic memory to update the procedural memory, like the train the model, and update the weights. So that is an instance where episodic memory is being used to update the procedural memory. And so this episodic memory is there are a lot of information in these past episodes. So usually in your applications, we need to query this information. So you have to have some strategy, what is important for us to query. So there are certain approaches that uses these criteria. You need to give weights based on your scenario. You may need to care about the recency, whether that episode happened in the past few days or weeks, or happened few years ago, or what is the importance of that memory, or whether it's relevant to the task that we are doing. So we have to think about these things when we are querying for this to do reasoning. And then there's the working memory, that is like the temporary storage that we do for having the reasoning. So you have to have, so for reasoning you have to have readily available data. You retrieve data from these different memory stores. And it's like a central hub managing agents' current circumstances. So there are multiple ways of doing this. In some papers they have done using LLM's own context. They are not storing it in anywhere. Use agent's context window itself for chain of thought and in Scratchpad to store this information. And in subsequent queries, they use the previous context in the memory. But there are approaches that use separate data structure to persist this stuff. So you can have a temporary data structure to retrieve this information, and you work with this, and with each LLM call, you retrieve some information and fill up some variables in your data structure, use it to reason, and then store in other memory forms as needed. So when you are designing something, you have to think about what to track in working memory. You don't have to fill everything, fill up all the details in the working memory, and you have to think about what is in the long-term memory versus working memory. And you need to have some structured reasoning procedure to go from one type of memory to the other. Okay, so we talked about memory types, but how about going between each of these memory forms? So you need to do some actions. So there's an internal actions that we are doing to convert between these different memory forms. For example, reading from long-term memory, usually we call it retrieval, and updating short-term memory can be defined as reasoning. Then there's learning, that is writing to long-term memory. That is about the internal actions. And then there's external actions. You do some actions on the external environment, like physical environment or digital environment, and you observe things on the environments as well. Those are the external actions. Okay. So for doing these external actions, we use external tools. Not we, the foundation model agents use the external tools. So there are different type of external tools. There are web services based APIs. You can post on Twitter, read Twitter, post some message on Discord, check my email. For these type of things, you can use web APIs. Then you can access knowledge bases as tools. There's like there's archive. There's like different papers in archive. You can access those, and then the Wikipedia articles. You can use this as, you can define this, accessing these knowledge bases as tools. And then there's external models. So for example, the agent may not be capable of doing everything. You may need to talk to another external model to do some image recognition or some video recognition. So you may have to call other external models. And then there's another form of external tool that's really interesting, that is symbolic modules, that stuff that the language model, they are not really good at. They can use these external modules. For example, like you can use a Python interpreter to run some Python code and get some feedback, or use a physics engine to run some physics simulation, and constraint solver to do some stuff. So yeah, so these are the different forms of tools. There are different ways of connecting to these tools and inside the agents. Okay, so how is foundational models interacting with these external tools? So there are multiple ways. I'll go through one common way. So in certain cases, you just need a single turn. So user asks about find flights. You just call the find flights tool with certain parameters, and you get some information. But there are some multi-step stuff also. So in this case, user says, I want to plan a flight to Tokyo for tomorrow. So first, agent needs to do a tool call to find flights, and then do another call for booking flight, and send the final result back to the user. So you had to do multiple calls to the external tool. Then there's multi-turn also. There's a slight difference. Multi-turn is user says something, you have to do a tool call. You may have to do multiple tool calls, but then user says something else. User says, oh, out of these flights you found, book this specific flight. So you need to go back and forth between the user also. So it's a mix of tool calling and user interaction. This is even more complex. So there's this, to achieve one goal, the agent may need to do multiple calls, multiple rounds of user requests. So there's this leaderboard called Berkeley function calling leaderboard that has different scenarios for this tool calling stuff. You can measure the capabilities of the functional calling or tool calling models using this leaderboard. Okay, now I want to go into details about how exactly are we calling the tools from foundational models. So first, usually you have a system prompt saying, in this environment, you have access to this set of tools, this particular set of tools. When I ask you a question, use one of these tools to answer the question. And then you can give more details. For example, in Anthropic, they have this configuration. You can say type auto. That means the model can use any of these model, any of these. A user can decide. The model can decide which tool to use, or it can also decide not to use any tool. But there's another configuration called any. We are asking the model to use at least one tool. Then there's the third type. We specifically tell the tool that we should use. Here we say we should use the send email tool. And this is how the model responds usually. Model says, oh, for this particular task, at this step, I should use this particular tool. So you can see it's thinking, and then it points out the tool name, the tool parameters, the arguments that you need to pass to the tool. It's like function arguments. But you can see how this can go wrong, right? So because models can hallucinate, it's very tricky for them to properly spell the tool name sometimes, or the give correct parameters. Have to figure out the parameters. It can make up the it can give you made up parameters. So as a solution for this problem, there's a paper that's done a fine tuning on LLM to generate correct input arguments for API calls and correct method calls for doing external API invocations. So here they explain how they train this model, fine-tune this model to do tool calls properly. And then there's another recent paper called Code Act. What it says is, so this JSON-based approach is very hard to do, and it's not very efficient. So instead of spitting out this tool invocations as JSON, we can use the model to spit out this control flow and the tool calls as code. So it's easier to express the control flow and all these things using code. So why don't we use code? So this Code Act paper talks about how to use code generation to do tool calling. That's another way. Okay, so now we get to the interesting stuff, reasoning and planning. So when someone says, oh, this model can do reasoning, this is good at reasoning, we have to first ask which one of the reasoning it can do, because there's been a lot of literature about different types of reasoning. So we have to be specific. So there's something called common sense reasoning, capacity to infer and apply everyday intuitive knowledge. There's mathematical reasoning. There's logical reasoning, process of drawing inferences and making decisions based on formal logic. Causal reasoning, multimodal reasoning, visual reasoning, and embodied reasoning. So there's different type of reasoning. We have to be clear what type of reasoning are we talking about. Are the models capable of doing anything? But most of the time, in the recent papers, it seems they are going towards a certain direction. That is, decomposing a potentially complex task into simpler subtasks, so the foundation model can solve them easily using tools. So instead of asking a foundation model to solve the thing in one shot, can we break it into pieces? Like the foundation model itself, can it break it into sub-steps and sequentially or in some way execute these sub-steps to achieve the final thing? So that's the most recent definition of reasoning in this space. So about generating intermediate steps, to improve LLM performance, you have multiple approaches. You can train the model with these intermediate steps. So in this paper called Program Induction by Rational Generation, they train the model with the rationals inside. For these maths type of problems, they have the rationals included. And then you can fine tune with intermediate steps. So there's this GSM 8K dataset that's released recently about mathematics problems. It includes these steps, intermediate steps for maths problems, so people can use it for fine tuning. Then you can prompt with intermediate steps. You can like do some sort of few shot prompting, show some, this is how this has been done, like using a scratch pad to break down the problem and execute this, and then do this new question also the same way. So in the paper called Scratchpad for Intermediate Computation, they do it this way. But there's another simpler approach. People say you can just ask the model to say, you can just prompt, think step by step. You don't need any of this. You just say to the model, think step by step, and then model thinks step by step. Yeah, then people are looking into how actually model is doing this and all this. But then without any of these things, can we tell the model how to choose the correct path, do a correct decomposition, and follow the correct path? So that's what researchers are looking into. So one approach is they are saying self-consistency improves this step-by-step reasoning. What they are doing there is, so for a certain math problem, for example, you generate reasoning steps and get a solution. You sample, you have multiple reasoning paths, and some of them have the same answer. So they consider those ones as the correct reasoning path. So the key thing there is you're not looking for the same reasoning paths, exact reasoning paths. You are looking for the same final answer. So you think for some problems you can do multiple reasoning. There could be multiple reasoning strategies, but to get to the if you get the same answer from these different reasoning paths, that's most likely to be correct. So what they are looking at is not the similarity between reasoning paths, but the similarity between the final answers. So this approach they call self-consistency. But then there are also other papers. This reasoning thing is not really perfect. There are a lot of limitations. One thing is, as I said yesterday, irrelevant context. So when you say some math problem and give the model some irrelevant details, like, oh, my rent is this much, even though it's not related to the maths problem, they use that information. So irrelevant context, it's confusing the model. And then self-correction. People tried asking the model itself to correct, like correct if itself if it's not right. But the tricky thing there was they found out, so the model doesn't know when it's correct or wrong, right? So it tries to correct itself because we have this loop going on. It tries to correct when it's tries to correct even the correct solutions and go on the wrong paths. So it doesn't know when it's not very capable of understanding when itself is correct. So self-correction is not really working. That's what this paper says. And then there's premise order. So for a certain logical problem, you need to have certain premises. As humans, we may be able to reorder these things. Like for a causal thing, we may be able to reorder these premises and build the complete picture and solve the thing. But what these guys found in this paper was, if you jumble the premise order, the model gets confused. So the reasoning stuff that they have in the foundational models is not really perfect. And then there's reasoning reasoning models that's been coming up recently, like O1, that is also looking into these different reasoning paths and coming up with a correct solution. But there's OpenAI has not really released how they have done doing this reasoning stuff in O1. So I'm not going to talk about that stuff because there's not much publicly available information about this stuff. I don't want to speculate about this thing. And then, so now we talked about a theory a lot. So I want you to focus on this test. So, okay, I'm going to before introducing the test, I'll tell you. So this test has been used previously to understand how people think and how, from a young age, how we build a model about external world. So this test has been used by cognitive researchers and psychology researchers. So if you have a small kid at home, you can try doing this test with them. You can figure out when they'll. So they have been studying at what stage people get these capabilities, at what age people get these capabilities. So the test goes like this. So we introduce two people. There's Sally and Anne. Sally has a basket, Anne has a box. So Sally has a marble. She puts the marble into her basket. Sally goes out for a walk. Anne takes the marble out of the basket and puts it into the box. Now Sally comes back. She wants to play with her marble. Where will Sally look for her marble? Where will Sally look for her marble? So if you ask a kid, like a very, very small kid, where will Sally look for her marble? What do you think is the answer? Sorry, what?
I don't know what the small kid will say. That's an interesting test. I will say, me as an adult, I will say, she will probably search in the basket because that's where she left it last time. But I don't know if children will say, oh, she will look in the box. I have no clue if children have that cognition, or they will go for the order of events and they will not reason. So I don't know how children will answer that.
Exactly. So that's the same observation, right? So small kids, they found out. So they'll basically say they don't have the concept that, oh, Sally went out of the room, so Sally is not aware of what happened inside the room. So they just say they'll look inside the box. But after some time, like when you grow up, they found after a certain age, you start to think about what other people are thinking. You're trying to build a model about other people's thoughts. And then most of the grown-ups say, okay, it's the basket. So this concept is called theory of mind. So you can build a theory about what's in the other people's mind. Now we are using this. So this is about humans, like the theory of mind for humans. But now we are wondering about what foundational models are capable of. What is the theory of mind inside foundational models? Can foundational models think about what other people are thinking? So that's this idea. This is very important. Like there are some recent papers saying, theory of mind. There could be theory of mind capabilities emerging in foundational models, or they are already there. But I'm not going into details about that, whether they have this or not. This is about the why should we study this. So if you use AI foundation model based agents in some application, sometimes to better answer the user request, the model needs to think about the user, what the user is thinking, like what's their background, what are they currently trying to do, and are they frustrated, what is their model inside their brain. So the foundation model has to build a model inside themselves about this. And then, so people have studied this space. It's called human AI communication. Like when we have a conversation with human, when a foundation model has a conversation with humans, not only foundation models but different AI models, how this conversation goes. So first thing they are saying, so to be more effective, AI needs to construct a theory of mind about the user's intentions and what user is thinking, and then to understand the limitations of the model, maybe the human needs to interpret what the model might be thinking, and then you can, maybe you have to say, yeah, I was not thinking about that problem, it's a different one, I want you to focus on this one. So you have to correct the model's thoughts, and maybe the foundational model have to revise its theory of mind based on what user gave. So it's like a mutual thing, what they call mutual theory of mind. All the parties need to think about how other person is thinking and how they are building a model about the environment or the other person. So this is constructing and revising interpretations of each other. So people have been trying to study this and improve this. So what they showed, like using just chain of thought, you cannot get good results. For that bowl question, it will say the basket without building the model. But if you add some extra help, if you just try to step into other person's shoes, like if we force the model to step into the other person's shoes, if we just say, what does Jim know? Like if you had an additional step saying, what does Jim know? It will consider this and give the correct answer. So they call this perspective taking, or stepping into other person's shoes. And then there's other work about building a world model with beliefs and goals inside the agent. So we talked about this different type of memory. So these people have been studying how these memory concepts can be used to build a model about the outside world. Not the common sense stuff, but what's happening right now. What is the other person wants to do? What is their background? Things like that. They say this is required to decide the most appropriate thing to say, like how to respond. So there's this work on this area. Okay, so now with this development, this paper's coming out, people have been studying this further. How many of you know about this problem called Cheryl's birthday? Anyone? Okay, then it's good. No, so it's a popular, not really popular, it's a logical reasoning quiz from some time ago. So what happens here is, so there are three people. There's Cheryl, Albert, and Bernard. Cheryl wants to communicate their birthday to Albert and Bernard without giving the specific birthday. So what Cheryl does is they're giving 10 possible birth dates and tells them different information. Albert knows the month, Bernard knows the day. And both of them know all these 10 dates. Okay? So then, yeah, these are the 10 dates. Then first Albert says, so with this information, Albert says, I don't know when Cheryl's birthday is, but I know that Bernard doesn't know either. And then Bernard replies, at first I didn't know when Cheryl's birthday is, but now I know. So based on Albert's statement, Bernard says, at first I didn't know when Cheryl's birthday is, but now I know. And then Albert says, oh, now I know when Cheryl's birthday is. So based on Bernard's response, they could also infer Cheryl's birthday. So this is like, you have to think about all these different combinations. There's only one answer. There's a solution. There's one birthday. So you can think about this problem later, but there's a solution. So people wanted to know the capabilities of the foundational models. It's not. It's like, how do I say? So there's been recent developments about this space. So there's been papers about theory of mind, about foundational model capabilities. So Peter Norvig, one of the famous people in this space who have written books also, did this experiment recently. So he used 10 foundational models, just gave these 2 tasks. Write a program to solve this problem. Solve a reworded variant of the problem with different dates. So it's just because there could be the solutions in the training data set, so you don't want to get influence from these answers. So we want to solve a different variant. He tried it with different 10 foundational models, but the bad news is human, the task he gave it to, human could solve both requests, but none of the LLMs could reliably solve these requests. So that was his finding. Oh, no, these models doesn't have theory of mind. But then there was a Hacker News discussion about this, and then came O1. O1 Mini gets it right on the first try. So now we have a problem whether the O1 has theory of mind or not. So yeah, we don't have an answer for this. Okay, now we move on to cognitive architectures. Cognitive architectures is so usually you cannot answer, foundation model cannot answer a question from one foundational model call. You sometimes have to query it multiple times in different ways, different patterns. So somehow how the human cognition process works, similar to that, they may have to build some architecture to find a solution for a problem. React is one such architecture. This is how it works. So usually there's reasoning to get an answer from a question. So a question is given to an LLM, you do some reasoning steps and you get an answer. And then there's the acting. You have an observation from the environment, you do some action, and you go on a loop. Like based on that action, you get another observation, you do another action. So these folks thought of combining these 2 approaches. Why not do both, reasoning and acting? Sounds simple, right? But this really a clever way of doing things. So this paper has been cited a lot of times and has been the inspiration for many tools like LangChain. So the idea here is you do both. You do reasoning and acting. Let's see how this works with a real example. So here, so the user asked about some Cirque du Soleil show, and find the hotel it is in, like that. So from that, based on that query, it thought this is what I need to do, and as the first action, foundational model decided I need to search the Cirque du Soleil show. So then there's when it comes to this step, that means this is a tool call. So you can use a search engine to do the actual search query, and you get some results. But what is the observation? The observation is it could not find Cirque du Soleil show Mystere. So based on this observation, it has another thought. To find the hotel, I can search Mystere, Cirque du Soleil, both of them, these terms. So now it reformulates the search query and does a different action, searching for a different thing. And now it gets an answer. So based on that observation, so that observation says it's in a custom theater at this Treasure Island hotel. Okay, so based on this observation, it has a third thought. Likewise, this goes on and on until it finally determines the answer there is 3,000 something, the number of rooms in that hotel. So as you can see, you had to do bunch of thinking steps and also action steps to get to that. So this is basically React, but there's a key limitation here. It doesn't have semantic or episodic memory, so it cannot do like retrieval or learning actions. And then there's another work called reflection. So the idea behind reflection is, so you can, the foundation model can do some actions on the environment and get some reactions, and that responses could be in natural language, reflect on that and update my long-term memory based on these. So you receive the textual feedback, do some reflection, then do some learning by updating the long-term memory. So this is the whole idea behind reflection. So as you can see, this React, reflection, and all these things are different combinations of combining these fundamental building blocks we talked about earlier, the tools, the memory, the reasoning, all this stuff, we can combine it in different orders and build these architectures to increase performance for certain tasks. So React and reflection are two popular ones like that. And then there's another popular pattern is called generator critique pattern. So foundation model based agent generates something, and there's some critique to give feedback. So that critique can be of many different types. One is the fixed reply. So as we discussed earlier, it's that this one is not doing any actual checking. It's just giving out a fixed reply saying, please recheck your answer or something like that. And then the foundational model recheck the answer it gave. So it's there's a generator, and then there's a fixed reply. And then there's the collaboration. So collaboration is, there's not only one foundational model based agent, but there's a critique also. So two of them pass messages between each other. One generates, one critiques. And then there's self-debug. You have a foundation model based plan generator, and you use some other tool like program testing, like a test suite, to do self-debugging. You are not talking to another model, but some deterministic tool. So these are three different variants of this generator critique pattern. And then based on these three fundamental patterns, we can build even more complex ones. So there's the refiner. So refiner is like before giving out an idea to the user using the answer generator, do some reasoning steps, reasoning feedback, do this bunch of times, then generate an answer. That's called refiner. And then there's camel, that is about role-playing agents. This is also very similar because it's also taking humans' input, agents act as different roles. And then there's baby AGI. Baby AGI is, it got popular few months ago about like doing these tasks autonomously. So how it works is it basically gets a problem from the user, breaks it down into multiple steps, put them into a queue, task queue basically, and then get one from that and try to execute that. While executing, you may have some more problems. You put those sub-problems again back there into that data structure, and you pick from that data structure again as you go along. So the goal is to finish the task queue by executing all these things step by step. But that is the way how baby AGI works. But this shows the same generator critic pattern can be a building block inside the whole baby AGI flow. So I just wanted to demonstrate how these building blocks can be used to build complex patterns. Okay, now there's multi-agent abstractions. We've been talking about only single agent patterns like cognitive architectures. How about when multiple agents are communicating with each other? So there are several basic building blocks. One is, so one unit or the agent is having like is backed by a foundation model. It can use a set of tools like Python interpreters or something else. And also they can communicate with each other. They can either communicate with multiple, with each other, the agents, or they can have conversations with humans also. And then you can have multiple conversation patterns. One is sequential chat. So that is like the order of the interactions are previously known. So you know how this conversation will flow. First, A and B has a conversation, then C and D has a conversation. Likewise, that's like an order of the conversation. This is pretty fixed. For certain tasks, we can have a fixed order like this that can be useful. And then there's the nested chat, where when you have a conversation with one agent, that agent can trigger another set of conversations with another nested group of agents. So that is nested chat. And then group chat, that is basically peer-to-peer. You talk with everyone, someone who's responsible, pick up the response, pick up what the agent said and response in a certain way. So it could lead to chaos also if not properly moderated. And then there's the hierarchical chat, where you have a manager, and manager moderates the whole thing. So manager says, okay, now you speak. Then certain agent with certain skills can try something out and give a response, and then the other one likewise. So these are different patterns. And based on these patterns, you can have different use cases. You can have like math problem solving, or RAG use cases, decision making, conversational chess, blah, blah. But the key idea is the modularity. So you are giving each agent its own system prompt and a context window. So it can focus on one thing and reason about this one specific task, and have better performance for that one, instead of thinking about all the other things that is polluting its system prompt. So breaking the system into parts, it will help with the debugging also, like in software engineering. Okay, so now we are going to use those concepts that we learned to quickly go through some examples from the wild. So generative agents, this is also a cool paper where you have a bunch of foundation model based agents doing different things. You can think of it as a virtual village. So they have different personas, they have different jobs, they have different, so via the system prompt we have told them this is your role, your name is blah, your job is this. You can, so they can simulate day-to-day interactions in this community. So you can, one agent can go to a pub and have a discussion with someone else, and then based on that response they can do something else, blah blah. So they are using it for simulating human behavior as a community. So the technical aspect here is they are using this episodic memory. So episodic memory has all these details, right? So I woke up at this time, I then did this, I got some feedback from someone else. So all these details is there in my episodic memory, and you have to query that and build, make sense out of these episodic memories. So if someone asks, what are you looking forward to the most right now? That agent queries its episodic memory based on some criteria like recency, importance, and relevance, and come up with some observations. So they respond, oh, Isabella is planning a birthday Valentine's Day party, and we ordered decorations for the party, researching ideas for the party. So that appears in episodic memory in most places. So the conclusion is Isabella is looking forward to the Valentine's Day party. So we built some high-level thing based on this episodic memory stream. And then you can build semantic memory from these episodic memory. For example, here there are a lot of low-level details about this person. Klaus Müller is reading about urban design. Klaus Müller spends many hours reading. Klaus Müller is discussing his research with a librarian. There are a lot of details. And from these observations, we can reflect, we can conclude Klaus Müller is highly dedicated to research. So you can use this semantic memory from reflection. That's the whole idea. And then there's Voyager. Voyager is it's about using how an agent can behave in Minecraft. The cool thing there is it can learn. So you are letting an agent open-endedly explore this Minecraft environment, and you can do certain actions. You can like mine wood and make crafting tables, combat with monsters, and mine diamonds and things like that. So for that, you need to learn some skills. You have some basic skills like mining wood or mining something else. But along the way, you need to build more skills. You need to sometimes, to build a sword, you need to have wood and steel. For wood, I need to go to the forest and get some wood. So you have to have some fundamental skills, and you have to learn skills along the way. So I'm sure people who's playing Minecraft will enjoy this example. It's very, very cool how they gave this environment for agents to explore. So what they found out is, so they can store procedural memory long term, and they can have a hierarchical library, and then you can do certain actions. So with these memory interactions, they found out their agent is learning all these technologies, the Minecraft tech tree, way faster using compared to other techniques. Okay, now I quickly go into some software engineering examples. Also, one is the SWE agent. So the idea here is, so when we are doing a software engineering task like issue resolution, we have to do several things. We have to navigate a repository, we have to search for certain files, view files, edit files, things like that. But the tools that we have for that may not be the most optimal for a language model. So for example, we have to use the terminal, we have to do cd, ls, blah, blah, like all the terminal commands to navigate the file structure. And then you have to open a text editor and do some code changes. These may be hard for a language model to do. So why not we build an abstraction that is more friendly for the foundational model-based agents? So they experimented with these different interfaces for all these tasks, like searching, for navigating the file system, for editing files. So here I have an example of searching. So they have the naive shell-only search that we have the Linux commands, and more advanced summarized search that is more foundation model friendly. So with this abstraction layer, they can better observe the environment and edit things. So they also got some good results for issue resolution with this technique. So key idea is you have to redesign the agent-computer interface sometimes. Okay, now I go to a multi-agent example. So the idea here is you have a specialized agent for decomposing things into different tasks, like a manager, and then manager makes a plan who needs to do what based on their roles, their capabilities, and then this static plan, the task graph, is executed by different people. So in this issue resolution example, you have to reproduce the bug, you have to localize the fault, you have to edit, you have to generate a patch, you have to verify the patch is correct, things like that. So you have different roles. Manager made the plan and you execute this. So it has also shown some good result. Okay, so now I come to the end of the talk, that is about the open research challenges. I want to present to you three main challenges, but there should be a lot more, but these three things I think very important. So how many of you have heard about the paperclip maximizer problem? Yeah, so paperclip maximizer is a thought experiment people have about the harms of this artificial intelligence, how it can lead to world's end or the civilization's end. But if we think about agents that we use for like building software applications or our day-to-day tasks, what is like the paperclip maximizer for in this world? Like if we are creating a software engineering agent and we are giving it the access to our whole AWS dashboard with the credit card access and everything, what will it do? How will it use that computing budget to do stuff? Whether it will reach our goal or whether it will reach some other goal. So then in this type of scenario, you have to think about how to control this type of agents. What is the level of control we should have? So there's some research going on in this area, but not much. And then, as I said, human agent interfaces is also very important thing. I think people need to look into this more. Recently, Claude, Anthropic has looked into this, and they have this concept called Claude artifacts, where you can prompt something in natural language and create a small app on the side, and it's customizable. You can play around with this app, and you can reprompt and create different versions of this application. It's good for some stuff for prototyping, or for some minor tasks that we have. So maybe so we know, like, ChatGPT was the first product that popularized this foundational model based technologies, but that may not be the optimal interface. You need to maybe use some other forms of modalities to communicate with foundational models, to get feedback, and to get more productivity. So this is one thing. And then recently, like few days ago, GitHub Spark was announced, where they can prompt in natural language and get different versions of applications, and you can select a path you like, and you can follow along and improve the application that way. So that's also one way of interacting with these foundational models to build something. So people are still exploring how can we better communicate with these foundational models to build things. We may not have figured the optimal way yet. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And also with everything, there's the evaluation challenges. So people are still coming up with these benchmarks to evaluate agent-related challenges, agent-related tasks. So one approach was, like, for software engineering stuff, there were different evaluations like human eval, MBPP, API bench, but then came big code bench. What they propose to do is, like, not only the complexity of the task, we have to think about the breadth. So in that benchmark, what they have is tasks that at least need, like, 3 tools in minimum. I think in big code bench hard, the problems at least need to use 3 tools to solve. So how can we increase the breadth of our problems in our benchmarks? That's what big code bench looked into. And then there was SWE bench. They were also saying, oh, current programming problems are too trivial. They are like competition problems. We need to reflect the real world tasks in software engineering. So they came up with this issue resolution scenario, the merge request being resolved. So they selected some merge request that has the test case to check the preconditions, basically how the buggy code was there, and how the fixed, what is the fix, and how the tests are passing now. So they filtered out certain GitHub issues for this, but this benchmark is also having certain issues now. And there's this new benchmark called Tau bench. I like that idea of that also. That is, so most of these current benchmarks are looking at pass at k, like you give 10 chances to the model to come up with the right answer, or you give 5 chances or 100 chances. Like when you give more chances, what is the likelihood of that model coming up with the correct answer? But if you look at the real world scenarios, if you are not working with a customer service agent is not getting 10 tries or 100 tries. I want it to give me the correct answer as much as possible. It should be robust. It should be reliable. So what they are looking into is, like, in 10 times, 100 times, how reliable it is. Like with this one, this number of observations, what percentage can it get correct? the robustness. So this is applicable. So there are certain types of problems that we can let them to retry. Like you can spend several months or days retrying to come up with a solution, but there are certain tasks you need to come up with the solution in the first try. So for you need a different benchmark for that. That's their argument. And then there's other companies that claim for like a more holistic benchmark. It should have like it should be grounded, responsive, accurate, disciplined, transparent, helpful. So how can we consider all of these aspects to build our benchmarks? Like I know ServiceNow, the company is working on something like this in this area. So it's still an open problem how we evaluate the machine learning based agents. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you learned some things about foundation model agents. So I have two comments just before wrapping up my presentation. While going through these papers, I found two interesting quotations that I want to share with you. The first one is coming from 1994. It's written by Michael Woolridge. He's a professor at Oxford University. He has written this book in 1994 called Intelligent Agents, Theory and Practice. I don't want you to read through the whole text, but the key idea is, so people were wondering why does the definition of agent matter? What is the importance of having a proper definition for an agent? If these people claiming to be building agents and if it's serving some purpose, why do we have to bother about these definitions? His argument is if we have all these, if we don't have a clear idea about these terminological details, the concept of agents become noise and it will be abused and misused. It will confuse the research community. So I think we may be observing some of this these days. So I wanted to share about this quotation. And then there's a recent paper about, the paper is called Talking About Large Language Models. I thought of sharing that also because I thought this is relevant to talking about agents also. So we are talking about foundation model believing things, thinking about things, understanding things, terms that we use with humans, but their argument is this is exotic mind-like entities. Is it fair for us to use terms like this to explain these systems? So we have to spend some time interacting with these artifacts before using words like this. So we should not be anthropomorphism. Like we shouldn't treat them as same as humans. So there's this argument in this paper about this. I just wanted to share that with you. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. If you have questions, please raise.
Thanks, Keheliya. I'll bring the.
Okay.
So thank you, Keheliya. That was such a detailed presentation. There was so much to learn. Thank you for going through all these papers and digesting all of this information and giving us all of this, right? I could see so many people taking screenshots and writing down, so thank you first, right? And then my question to you is, there was one thing that I didn't see in this presentation. Maybe there is research or there isn't research, and as an expert, I'm asking you, right? In conversations, you kind of briefly mentioned that these agents talk with humans as well, and there's conversations with humans as well, right? Humans are very ambiguous, and sometimes it's very, like, software doesn't fail because the program did something wrong, but it's mostly because we misunderstood what we wanted the program to be doing, right? Computers are quite precise. Yes, they have some problems in compilers and at a lower level, but we are very imprecise and we are very ambiguous. So what are we going to do about that when we are talking with, you can't ask me to write formal requirements, right? That's not an acceptable answer, I would say.
Yeah, I can tell you we are working on that. So at our work, we are conducting research about that. How can we capture requirements better, align with the user, understanding their intent to do, like help foundational models capture the intents better. So there are several techniques being proposed. We are trying different things. So one thing is like through the conversation itself, you may have to identify there are some ambiguities first, and then you may have to re-prompt the user, oh, please clarify this. So I know the Clarify GPT paper, the author, the main author is here. So in that paper, they talk about like, oh, how can we, maybe he can explain better, but how can we generate candidate programs, and you can get the output from that. And if we get different outputs, that means the user's requirement was different. So can we re-prompt the user to give clarification? But then there's the limitation of like, okay, so in most of the problems, you don't have the privilege of generating candidate programs. The system is so complex, you cannot do that. So in that way, that case, you have to do the natural language back and forth itself, right? Like you have to ask more questions. But then there are questions like, oh, can we keep asking questions? Users will get frustrated, and what area should we focus on for our questions, and when to stop, and things like that. That's why these models like theory of mind will help. We can track the users' intents and their goals, what they want to do, what is their background. So if this user is from a certain background, if they are using certain terminologies, if it is ambiguous in the general sense, but if we know the user's experience, we can infer user is thinking about this particular thing, some things like that. So how can we build these models? That's one thing. And then I think one other promising direction is from these interfaces. We haven't figured out the interfaces yet for doing this properly. So how can we do mock-ups, or like allow humans and agents to edit mock-ups together and clarify things that way, give feedback using these like diagrams and things like that. You know, like if we, like when we are talking when two humans are talking, if we are not very clear about certain things, we just quickly run to a whiteboard and draw things and explain concepts, right? So how can, like with these multimodal things, can we use some approach like that? Because there's like vision plus text models available, like it's a lot of avenues, interfaces and like building user models, blah blah.
I want to second, and I think if you ask everyone, they will raise their hands. This is extremely insightful. You've done a tremendous amount of contribution to our community, like summarizing. You know, it would have taken us hundreds of hours to get to this level of understanding. So I have one question from chat that I want to read from Fraol, and then I have a question of my own.
Okay.
So is it okay if I start with the question from chat from Fraol? He says, thank you for the insightful presentation. I have a question about the planning component in LLM-based agents. Planning is often cited as a core feature of agentic systems, but I'm curious about what exactly constitutes planning in this context. How does it extend beyond step-by-step thinking as we see with the chain of thought prompting? So if you can talk a little bit about the planning part of the agents and how is it different from the step-by-step, the chain of thought reasoning and prompting.
Yeah, so there's a few papers about, we can think of planning as like using reasoning to decompose a task to achieve a certain goal and work towards that. There's a separate literature about like doing specifically planning, and there's some papers about like whether LLMs can actually plan. So I think there are benchmarks that they are using. I think it's called Blocks World or something. This is about like how can you stack some blocks on top of each other. There are some problems like you have to like it's a physical problem, like robotics based problem. So for this type of tasks, how can you use LLMs? So I don't really remember the professor's name, but there's some active group working on this area. He has a bunch of papers in this area, like LLMs can't plan. And there's another version, there's LLMs still can't plan. Like with every new version, like he's coming up with these different ways of evaluating planning capabilities in this physical domain and reporting the results. What he's suggesting, I felt like he's suggesting is this combination. So in the planning community, there are already like plan generators and like plan verifiers and things like that for doing this type of stuff. They have so he's suggesting we can use both of these combinations, like these classical planning tools along with foundational models. There's a term for this combination approach, and this can be used to improve things. And he has a recent paper about I think its title is can LRMs plan? So he's calling this O1 model language large reasoning model. So he used O1 to do this evaluations and check if it can plan. Like it's I think it's a use of reasoning. The planning is use of reasoning. So they are still investigating what are the capabilities. I think the insight from that paper, LRM paper, is it can do better than LLMs for planning. But if you look at the costs involved, the classical ones are still better. They do this with very less computational cost, and they have certain guarantees that this language model doesn't have. So his insight is that. I think if you refer to those papers, you can get some idea. But I want to point out, so I felt like this is still limited to this robotics domain or this type of things, planning this type of things. As knowledge workers or as software engineering folks, we haven't looked into how software engineering tasks can be planned using language models. Like that part of stuff, I think we still need to look into.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'll pass this to other people too.
Okay. Thank you for the very rich talk, and you touch a lot of areas that are quite new, like the aspect of bringing the different agents and models from different representation. That brings in mind, we are focused so much on language models, which is not a good representation for intelligence, for knowledge, or any form of understanding the real world. Look, when a baby is in the mother's womb, that baby starts learning the world around them, and when they come out, they learn from different perceptions and sensory systems. Might be later down 5+, they start reading text. They have already formed, most often, their cognitive power, their understanding of the world through their visions. So bringing this multi-agent, now how are we sure of this kind of distribution, which model will be well suitable and how to leverage those type of data? Now, when we look at the common practice today, we call some languages low resources. Low in terms of textual representation, not low in terms of quality and information. I know most cultures, they have sculptures, music, and many other forms where they transmit rich information, but it has not yet been excavated.
Yeah.
So how do we bring in this kind of information to give a very clever representation? Thanks.
Yeah. Short answer is a lot of people, like, it's not studied yet. There's a lot of openings there to study, even in the body of work about how people learn, people reason, or people learn about things. There are studies about, is language a tool for doing this? So they like, I'm not an expert in that area, like cognitive sciences and these type of things. There are studies showing, like, people who learn a different, like, if their native language is different, how their thinking is also different. So there are arguments back and forth how the reasoning is affected through the language they learn, and the other way. So it's still being studied even in the human context, and also how people learn about these things. Yeah, like funny story. I got like I was really interested in, like, so I have a very so my son is 2 years old. Like, he's learning about these things now, about how to explain things, how to speak, how to describe things. So I was really fascinated how he learned the concept of color and objects. So we taught him things like yellow chair. Now we only showed him few examples of chairs, and we told him these are chairs, and this one is a yellow chair. But somehow he inferred that, even for new cases of chair that he has not seen, he identified this as a chair. That's not the interesting part. He identified the concept of color also. If you think about it, like, now he can point to a bus and say yellow bus. So I was really fascinated by that. So we haven't told him these are different colors that exist in the color is a way of explaining this thing, but he know this is adjective that explain a certain property of this object. So it's interesting to observe how humans learn about these things and get some insights. But the answer is, we don't know. Like, I don't have the expertise, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on there.
Okay, let's thank Keheliya. Thanks so much. Thank you.